When Yosef sent his brothers back to get his father, to inform his father about everything that transpired over the many years, Yosef instructs his brothers, וישלח אחיו וילכו ויאמר אלהם תרגזו בדרך. בדרך. Don't get agitated. What exactly was Yosef's intention with this statement, with these instructions? So before we go with one of the classic explanations, I'm going to offer many. Very interesting Bal Haturim to point out. The Bal Haturim comments on this. It's a quote. Yesh mefarshim al tismechu alai lomer. Don't rely on me, says Yosef to his brothers. Achinu godol aretz. Don't tell people I have a great brother in Egypt. He's second in command. Don't tell him that. La sois aval l'shum adam. And then you'll use my position, my high position, as an excuse to do whatever you want. Don't do that. Don't go trespassing on anyone's field that is planted. Don't go on the farms. Don't eat the produce. So, what's the explanation of this? Why would Yosef's brothers think, oh, we could do whatever we want since Yosef has a high position? Why would his brothers think that? Then the Bal Haturim offers another explanation. Classic. Come back to it. That's the Bal Haturim's lesser known explanation of what Yosef was telling him. So Rav Zilberstein builds on this Bal Haturim a whole piece in the Alanu Leshabayach. I'd like to speak out what he says over here. It's very relevant for our day and age. Perhaps the explanation is when Yaakov was going to be informed that his son was still alive after all those years, and they were concerned that after they were so excited to inform Yaakov about this, they were going to go with all of their strength, with all their might to run to their father as fast as they could. And perhaps it would be nechlal in the sug of ratz l'sorich bikuach nefesh, vehezik b'derech shu pater. Maybe it would be life and death. It would be categorized as a life and death situation in which, as we know, if you have a life and death situation, you go through the red light, you put on your, right? The Hatzalah, the ambulance, whatever it is, if it's life and death, even if you're not ambulance, you go through. Assuming it's safe. Life and death, you can do whatever you want. Life and death. As the Aruch Hashulchan explains in Choshen Mishba, Shinai in Ches Yotes, and therefore you'd be exempt from damages. That's one explanation. Second explanation of this Bal Haturim is, since they were brothers of the king, maybe they thought, mutter lifroitz lo derech besadar acher. Gotta go in someone else's field. In English we call this, I think, eminent domain. Do whatever you want. I saw that head nod. He knows what I'm talking about back there. You can do whatever you want. You gotta build a highway. You need something for the public. You're king. You run the show. As the Gemara in Baba Kama discusses on Samach Amid Beis, Melech poiritz lasois lo derech vein milchem yado. King, you can make pathways, highways, etc. No one protests. And if they do, their opinion won't matter much usually. So therefore he said, no, don't think about that. Don't think that you could just do that. Don't do it. Don't trespass. From over here, we could learn from here a very powerful, relevant lesson. A lot of times, people in their private property are very careful not to make a mess. They won't cause damage. But then sometimes when we go out in a public area, a litter, leave a little wrapper there, never hurt anyone, except for the animals that you killed because they ate it. But don't worry about them. But the point is, even for us seeing it, it's a big problem over here. It's an issue. He talks about it doesn't really happen over here, but in Israel, where a lot of people are living in apartments and they have the public garbage that they put up, so you got to pick the whole lid up, throw the bag in the huge dumpster, and some people are too lazy to pick the lid up, so they put the garbage on the top. Thing ends up stinking the whole outside. The animals come, the insects come, the smell is nasty. Pick the thing up, put it in public. Got to be careful over here. It's a relevant case over here that he talks about. There's an interesting Gemara in Baba Kama related to this topic. The Gemara says on Nun Amud Beis, actually a typo in the Sefer, it says Amud Aleph, but it says Maisa Ba'adam Echad. Story time. Everyone likes a good story. Right? Like Rabbi Galinsky says, the Medrash in the Mishnah, Pirkei Avos says, Lo ha-Medrash ha'ikar ela ha-Maisa. The learning isn't the main priority. Of course, learning Torah is very important. It's the Maisa, it's the action. The person's just going to learn, but he's going to be a bad person, not have good actions. You're missing the point. Says Rabbi Galinsky, Lo ha-Medrash ha'ikar. Most people don't care about learning. You learn in depth all of this, and you go through all this svaras. Elamai said, just throw out a story, everyone wants to hear it. So, oh, you throw out a story, everyone's listening. So what's the story that the Gemara says? So the Gemara says there was a person that was relocating rubble, stones, mirashus l'rashus hayabim, from his private domain, residential property, to a public area. All right, very good. Now, person encounters these rocks and stones, especially when they're going at faster speeds, it could be dangerous. So one pious individual found him, says the Gemara, and told him, Reika, you empty one. In English, we would call that, you lowlife, you bum, what are you doing? What are you doing that you are relocating this rubble over here from a domain that doesn't belong to you? Doesn't belong to you, to a domain that belongs to you. Rashi explains, why does your own property not belong to you? In the future, you might sell it. If you're not someone in your family eventually going to sell it, it's not going to be there forever. However, the domain that belongs to you, says Rashi, that's the public domain, where everyone goes, because it's always going to be public. It's always going to be there. You're always going to need a public domain, even thousands, hundreds of years later, whatever it is. So the Gemara says he made fun of him, the one who was relocating. What are you talking about? This is residential real estate over here. I pay taxes fair and square. Got the mortgage set up. I got all the payments rolled in. Got all the bills. What are you talking? So after some time, he actually needed to sell his property that he had, this fellow. And he was walking in the public area, boom! And he got injured. He said, oh my goodness, those are the stones that I moved. They got me. And he said, oh, that wise person, the pious person, he was right. He was right all along. Why are you moving it from something that isn't yours to a place that is yours? So you see, we got to be careful in public over here. Then Yaakov explains that the pious person called him an empty person. Why? Because the Gemara in Shabbos Amud Aleph says that Hillel, he said, okay, you want to learn the whole Torah? When I'm standing on one foot, I'll teach you the whole thing. Basically, love your fellow like yourself. What you wouldn't want done to yourself, don't do to someone else. That applies over here. He transgressed what is the essence of the Torah. It's a whole discussion. How does that encompass the whole Torah? After all, it only seems like it's between Bein Adam L'Chaver, man and man. That's another discussion in itself. We discussed that another time. That's why it explains that in Yaakov, he called him the empty one. So we see person could be learning the whole day, performing mitzvahs the whole day, but he's called an empty one. He's called a lowlife. Why? Because he littered. He didn't take care of the public area like himself. It's a serious thing. It's a serious situation over here. This is certainly something to think about and something to ponder. It's one explanation of why Yosef told his brothers, few explanations, Tергazו, b'derech. Don't get upset. My great-great-grandfather offers a commentary on the classic explanation in his Sefer Nachla Svi. Beautiful Sefer. You could get it on HebrewBooks.org for free. Also his other Sefer, Atera Svi. And he explains like this. Rashi opens up by citing a Gemara in Tainus on Yud, Ahmed Beis. The Gemara over here quotes our pasuk and then darshans it up a little bit. Gemara says, quotes Rabbi Elazar, who says, "Al tishasku b'davar halacha shemer tirgazoo or tirgoz aleichem b'derech." Don't learn Torah when you're going on the way. Why not? That's actually the Gemara's question. What are you talking about? We know from a statement of Rabbi Eli, Shnei Talmidei Chachamim shemahalchim b'derech v'emenim b'divrei Torah uyin l'sarif. If you have two scholars that are walking on the way and they're not talking Torah, they should be burned to death. See how serious it is, how important it is to learn Torah Kedosha when you're traveling. Gemara quotes the whole pasuk and everything. The Gemara answers, Loi kasha hola migros hola yune. Not a question. Learning in depth, don't do. Forget about it. You learn quick ideas, that you could already do. That's the Gemara's answer to this question. Then the Gemara offers another explanation. Yosef said, don't take two big steps. Travel when it's day. Okay, this is what to discuss over there. Rashi explains what we just said. Taisus over here quotes a medrash that says the opposite. Yesh medrash al tafsiku medavar halacha. That's the medrash says. Bereshis Rabbah. Don't stop learning Torah. How could we reconcile? So some say we have a major argument from the medrash and our Gemara and Tainus over here. Others say simple. The Gemara already answers it. Depends if you're learning in depth or not. In depth, stay away from it. Not, you got to do that for sure. 100% you have to do it. So, yeah, Marsha goes into it. A lot of commentary on this. Very interesting topic over here. Similarly, we have a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos in the third parak, Mishnah Tes. Mishnah says, Rabbi Yaakov Omer hamahalach b'derech v'shoinu mafsik mishnasa. Someone's walking and he's talking with someone else, an interesting Torah idea, and he stops. And he says, wow, look at how nice this tree is. Says the Mishnah, Olav hakosav kilu mischaya benafsha. Person's liable to die, says the Mishnah. Pretty intense. It's Pirkei Avos. You know, the children learn it, all that. Pirkei Avos. So, one explanation is, even though ma'arabu masech Hashem, like we say every single morning in the first bracha of Shema, wow, Hashem, look at all the creations you made. Still, it's powerful. Because Torah is the highest level. Malin b'kodesh vein marid, and you can't go down in holiness. You're dealing with the holiness, and now you're going down over here. Rashi explains when a person's learning Torah, he's protected from the Satan, the Malach HaMovis. They can't get us when we're learning Torah, like the story in the Gemara and Shabbos with David, Lamed, over there. But now, once we stop, boom, he can get us, he can attack us. But enough of the introductory remarks. What does my great-great-grandfather actually say about this? It says over here, according to my humble opinion, I'm going to tell you what I heard. It's quoting what he heard from his father-in-law. Av Bezdin of Serenich. What does he say? Another Gemara says in the Gemara in Brachos on Lamed Aleph, Al yiftar odem mechaveru ele mitoich davar halacha shemitoch kach zichruhu. A lot of explanations in that Gemara, not for now. Can't get it all in 15 minutes. But when you leave your friend, when you're not going to see a close acquaintance or family member for a long time, says the rabbis, it's a very auspicious time and they'll remember what happened at those last moments. Always leave with a bang. Torah Kedosha. Leave with the nice idea you heard. Something interesting you learned. You remember it the most. But we have another statement from another Gemara in Erechin on Tezayin that says, Al Yesaper Odem b'shivcho chaveru shemitoch shivcho balidei. Don't praise your friend too much. If you praise him too much, then you end up slandering the guy and you'll speak about how bad he is. But if you're quoting something that he said in his name, on the contrary, you say B'Shem Omro, you quote the person, the idea, the Torah idea you heard it from, Mevi Geula, like it says in the 6th parak of Avos. So now if a person is a good friend, according to this, you can't mention it. You can't even praise the friend. Comes the rabbis, come Chazal and say, no. When you leave your friend, though, say some Torah, say a halacha. Because when you do that, you're going to now be able to quote something in his name. You're going to say it in his name. Because only in that situation could you mention your friend. You could mention your friend if you're quoting a Torah idea that he said. So now we could all tie it back in with this nice little lumdus over here. So Rashi's explaining the brothers, they might start talking. And then you say, wait a second. It was your fault. It was your fault. You sold him. You tried to kill him. No. Can't do that. Don't start blaming each other over here. Don't start pointing fingers. Don't say you caused the sale, etc. He told them, just forget about it. Don't mention anything. Because you shouldn't even praise someone. Because you're going to start pointing fingers. Oh, so now, maybe you'll say, wait, they could say a Torah idea in Yosef's name. An idea that Yosef said, a Torah-related idea. That'll be permissible. That's why Yosef had to come out of his way and say, no. Even that. Even a Torah-related idea that I said, which would always 100% be not only permissible, but preferable to do, forget about it in this exception case. Forget about it. Because you might come, if you quote something that I said, you say B'Shem Omer by name, that's always fair game. You could always do that and should do that. Don't do it over here. One thing might lead to another. So those are a few interesting explanations on why Yosef, around 5 explanations and explanations within explanations, especially with the Bal Haturim, of what exactly Yosef was telling his brothers. Either he was telling them, just to recap everything we just did, he was saying, wait a second, don't trespass on someone's field. Why would you think that? Simple. You would think maybe because it's like a life or death situation to inform my father, and therefore you could do what you want, don't do it, or because maybe I'm in a high position of sorts, etc. That was the whole piece with the public domain and everything. Or you have the Gemara going into the different explanations of with the learning and why that would be a problem. Person also could get preoccupied with what he's learning, especially when it's in depth. And then you have this deeper idea, which is specifically Yosef was saying, don't quote any idea at all. Don't even mention my name once. Because if you mention my name once, the fire's still on, so to say, it's not put up. People could start blaming one another, and that could be a major issue. Any questions, comments on any of this? Okay. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Everyone should have a wonderful night. Rabbi Chanavina Kashamar Ratza Kadosh Baruch Hu Lizach Israel. It's Israel. Fichim Torah Mitzvah Shneim Anay Chabitz and Sidko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir.